And welcome one more time this Breeders' Cup Week 2 Racing Rundown. We hope that you have enjoyed all the content that we've been able to produce and put out this Breeders' Cup Week. There's been a lot of stuff that we've gotten into, obviously all 14 of the races among other things that we've had this week. So I thought I'd end it off. We're not doing a Racing Rundown live show, but I thought that I'd do a little video segment with one of the guests who would have been on that live show if I had the opportunity to do it, and that's my friend and fellow YouTuber Andrew, otherwise known as Roadwarrior627. So appreciate you coming on. It was kind of last minute. Once I realized I was going to have a few hours to do this with you, I reached out to you. So appreciate you on the short notice taking the time.
It may have been last minute, but it's wonderful to be here, and it's certainly a thrill.
Yes, and we're going to, go a little bit out of order with the races that we're going to talk about. Obviously, I've given my thoughts on these races, so, Andrew and I are just going to kind of shoot the breeze on the races on Saturday. That's why this is coming out so close to Breeders' Cup, just because it's better for us to just do the stuff exclusively on Saturday. And we're going to go into the race that the two of us think is the most interesting on Friday, and one of the most interesting just of the entire weekend, and that's the Breeders' Cup Turf. And there's a lot of opinions about horses in this race that the two of us have shared and have been shared across this podcast network. And I will certainly give you the floor to get into some of your, because this race is certainly filled with some of your favorite horses in racing right now.
Oh, absolutely. Some of my favorite horses are in here, although that's not an opinion held by many other people. Many other people, especially of the American horses, despise this division because they just like to keep beating up on each other. But thankfully, this time we have a queen in the race, and her name is an American queen, and her name is Warlike Goddess. And she definitely adds a lot of intrigue into a race that may have not been as exciting without her. And I think they made the right choice to run her in this race instead of the filly and mare Turf, of course, because of the distance. But how do you want me to do this, Jack? Do you want me to just give out my picks, or do you want me to talk about the pace scenario? What would you like me to do?
You can go into the horses that you were thinking, or the horses that you considered, anyone that you would potentially use in this race, and then if that factors in pace scenarios and things like that, feel free to touch on that.
Yeah, so I want to preface everything in this video with a caveat. I am not good at analyzing European racing, and I generally, I should say, lean on other people's opinions in addition to just watching the replays. And my opinion on Rebels Romance is I don't really know what to do with this horse. So usually when I have horses that I don't know what to do with, and especially when I'm just picking the race and not betting because I don't bet the Breeders' Cup for personal reasons, I will try to beat that horse. So that's what I'm going to try to do. The record speaks for itself. 4 in a row. Last 2 are Group 1s. Enough said. Charlie Appleby. But I'm going to speak about other horses in this race that I would use, and maybe you would want to use with Rebels Romance if you really like that one. My thought in this race is that there is the potential for the 2 speedballs to hang around a little while. And the reason being is there's not much speed on the surface of this race. And Bye Bye Melvin last time ran a really good race in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic out on the lead. He didn't go that slow, but he also, albeit was running on a part of the racetrack that was extremely advantageous at that time, being down on the rail. The rails were taken down at Aqueduct. It was definitely the best place to be on that inner turf course. However, that doesn't take away the fact that Keeneland often plays to speed on the turf as well, and the rails will be down for this race and all the Breeders' Cup races. So I would expect him to stay around a while. And then I just want to throw in, before we get into the real contenders, my boy Channel Maker, just give him a little shout-out. He's beaten every American horse in this race the last 2 years, running 3rd in 2020 and 5th last year. The old boy still got some fight in him. He's got 2 wins this year. I think he can hang around too, and he doesn't have to be on the lead to run well. He can stalk and run well too. So it just who's going to catch these two horses running from behind? Logic says plenty of horses will catch them, but if they moderate the pace enough, maybe not too many will catch them. But I have a feeling that two horses will definitely catch them, and those will be my top two picks. Warlike Goddess, I have to stick with her. The logic says Nation's Pride. My heart says Warlike Goddess. This horse was robbed of an Eclipse Award last year that she should have won. This year, she was robbed of an undefeated record by Joel Rosario. So she's been robbed by people, voters, and jockeys alike. And Rosario gets back on in this race, which I'm not happy about. But he needs to know that he does not have to be last in this race, because there are other horses in here that are slower than her. Just let her do what she wants. Let her run however fast she wants, whether that's in fourth or whether it's in eighth, and get on her with about 3/8 or 5/16 of a mile to go. Not wait until the 3/16 pole. You have to be on her earlier than that. But also not going into the far turn like Julian Leparoux did last year. It's not that hard actually to learn from other people's past mistakes and correct your own. Nation's Pride, number 7, of course, is extremely logical. The other Appleby. This horse just reminds me of Yabir last year. And this field, while it's an extremely intriguing betting race, you wouldn't say that there are real killers in here. We love Warlike Goddess. Rebels Romance has been impressive. But these are not all-time turf horses. This horse can step up and beat these horses. That Jockey Club Derby was extremely, extremely impressive, much like Yabir's last year, and we know what kind of kick he had in the turf. So those are the 4 that I would key around if you're throwing out Rebels Romance, the 2 logicals, Nation's Pride, just under Warlike Goddess will be my top pick, and then the 2 speeds, Bye Bye Melvin, and shout out to my boy Channel Maker. There's other horses in here I considered, like Stone Age, just from the Peter Brand angle, but I couldn't get to him in the end. Broom, I just don't like his recent form. And then on the outside, Highland Chief, I love Graham Motion, and this horse helped me make some money earlier this year in the Man of War, and he won last time in the Sycamore. Equibase loved that race. They put up a giant figure in there. But he was stalking an extremely slow pace and kind of just got the job done by a length. I didn't think it was that impressive, so I don't think I can use him in here. Maybe I can throw him in if there's a scratch, but I feel like he'd need a perfect trip from that outside post to get it done. I just don't see it happening. So those are my thoughts on the turf.
And I love that you mentioned the Channel Maker beating all the Americans in the last 2 Breeders' Cups, because I certainly mentioned that in my preview of this race. And for just reference, I went to Warlike Goddess in this race on top. Underneath horses, I went to, obviously you can't, I don't think you can leave out Rebels Romance, but I also agree very much with Andrew that Channel Maker is one to pick it up. Eric likes Channel Maker a lot. I like Channel Maker to run a good race underneath here. So 3 for 3 right now in this angle with Channel Maker when we talk about this. We'll move on to another turf race now, the Breeders' Cup Mile. This race draws a full 14 horse field. It seems, some people might underthink this race, some people might overthink this race, but the point is that this is a very fun group of 14. I also have a preview for this race. I was very excited when the field came up as competitive as it is, and there's once again a lot of different ways you can go in this race. What you think of throughout this race, Andrew?
Yeah, this is another race where there's some Europeans that I just couldn't really figure. So I went to the horses I know, and one of them, of course, is Modern Games. I think Modern Games is an absolute standout. I think he's by far the most likely winner of this race. I really don't care that he lost that last race at all, but I also can't pick him just because I'm a stubborn jerk. So I'm going to go to the horse that I thought earlier this year was the best miler in the country, and that is Regal Glory. It's very hard for me to go against Peter Brandt, and I can't do it here. I thought very highly of Regal Glory in just the game. I didn't pick her because I was stubborn that day. I didn't want her as the 7 to 5 second choice. So I will correct myself here. She got beat by just an absolutely primed Casa Creed in the 4-star Dave. And more on Casa Creed later, of course. And then in the First Lady last time, that's just the second straight race where an Italian absolutely tripped out and Regal Glory just couldn't catch her. I don't blame her for that. I mean, Chad does this all the time with stealing races with the longer price. So I'm not, I don't think she ran a bad race in there. And an Italian is in her appropriate race, and Regal Glory is definitely in her appropriate race. The mile is her distance, and I think she is an extremely major threat to upset the horses in here. And we know that American fillies and mares have absolutely no problem winning this race. In fact, Chad did it himself just 3 years ago. So I have absolutely no worries about Regal Glory throwing in a clunker. Another horse that I would use a little bit just from a defensive standpoint is Domestic Spending, but man, that post sucks for his return. You knew that last year he was just an absolute monster talent, winning the Turf Classic after really having no chance getting through the dead heat and just cruising off of the Manhattan, the Arlington Million, whatever. That race got wired going 52 for a half mile. I don't really care about that. For Chad to bring back this horse in a race like this is absolutely insane, ballsy move. A little shout out to Annapolis, too. I never really was that big a fan of him, but he proved himself last time. He beat some damn good horses in that race down at Keeneland. So I suppose I can't throw him out, but this is a race where if I was playing, which I'm not, I would try to keep it limited, and I would really try to keep it to 4-8 with maybe a little bit of 14, and probably in the horizontal wagers going race by race, so your doubles, pick threes, and such, I would just limit it to 4 and 8. I'm that solid on those two horses in here.
And now we'll go back to the beginning of the card for the filly and mare sprint. This is a race that draws almost a full field. 13 horses show up here. And anyone who's listened to Andrew knows that Andrew has a few trainers that he plays all the time. A couple of them are in here in this race with some prominent horses. And I'll have to ask you, are you going the old... Clement's not in here, but are you going the old Chad and Billy angle here, or did you look elsewhere in this race?
I'm going with a little Chad and Billy, yeah, but it's not just because they're Chad and Billy. If you just blindly bet trainers, you're going to lose money. You have to bet the horses that actually have a chance. I want to talk about Cece for a minute because, of course, she won this race last year. I'm just not impressed by her. I thought that race up at Saratoga was just... I didn't know what to think of it when I watched it. And that's the race where all the trainers we usually play came in. In fact, Chad over 3 Billies in a row, second, third, and fourth. So I don't know what happened that day. Last time, yeah, she won, but she had pretty much a perfect trip, and she was 30 cents on the dollar. So I'm going to have to throw her out here. I don't think she's going to repeat. Horses that I like in here, I do Night Olive because I like horses coming off of Saratoga. As much as I hate it from a racing perspective, and I think it makes the sport worse, I do like resting from Saratoga into the Breeders' Cup as far as a betting angle and the performance of a horse. So, yeah, I'm kind of a hypocrite in that sense. I want to see horses run more, but it does seem to work for them getting the rest from Saratoga. Also, 5 in a row. That's a lot of people say ones don't matter. Ones matter to me. So I definitely like that horse. And then the 2 Motts are okay. I think Obligatory's good. Frank's Rocket, I don't know. I just... She's kind of a second-itis horse who runs the money a lot. Last time, I mean, she really couldn't lose. And she had an easy pace despite it being at Charlestown. I believe that's a 2-turn, 7 furlongs, correct?
I'm not even sure what Charlestown is. That track configuration is so screwed. I really don't know off the top of my head. I apologize.
I think it's a 2-turn, 7 furlongs. So yeah, but she shows up, and if you want to use her in your exactas or triples, I don't see how you don't. She's definitely the kind of a horse you have to use in there. And then I'm just going to give a little shout. I've been giving a little shouts out to some longer prices. I was on Hot Peppers a lot earlier this year, and I had her in the Jersey Girl when she was a ridiculous favorite as part of a multi-race bet. And then I had her when she was a nice 4-1 in the victory ride. She ran her eyeballs out in the test, getting beat by Chi-Town Lady when she upset this day. She's also back in this race, but you're talking about 30-1, little dirtied up form from the Pyrrhus after being up on a suicidal pace. I like Hot Peppers a little bit at 30-1. That horse absolutely worth a little win and show wager, or maybe use in your exotics if you want. The horse I really don't know what to do with is Echo Zulu, because yeah, she won in her comeback race, but wasn't really facing anybody of merit, and she's stuck on the outside. I think this is a race to wait and see with Echo Zulu. I know she believe she ran in she won this race, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies last year. Different track, but she's run at this class level pretty much her entire career. I just don't like the post. I didn't see a fantastic effort last time. She did what she had to do, and she won by 5. She's just at 13. I don't think that's good for her, especially as someone who's going to be up on the lead, losing ground on the far turn. I'm going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and excuse me there. And with the amount of speed that is on paper in this race, it's certainly not going to be fun for Echo Zulu having to send and then certainly potentially getting floated into the turn, and it just doesn't look like it's going to be a fun day for her. We'll move on now to the turf sprint, and I know you're not the biggest fan of the short 5.5 furlong turf sprints. I'm not the biggest fan of them either, but I'm curious to hear where you're going to go, because Golden Pal is difficult to beat the way I drew the race up, but you just want to beat him because he's that kind of horse that every single time is asking for you to try to play against him. So I'm curious to see what your thought process in this race was.
Yeah, if you get 2-1 on Golden Pal, you should bet him to win. I'm not kidding. You should absolutely bet him to win. You got 5-2 on him last year, I believe. Yeah, 5-2, and that was a very fair price. And I don't bet horses to win under 3-1 because I don't have a lot of money to make bigger bets. But if you have the money, 2-1's a good price. I don't think you're getting 2-1. And yes, I am going to try to beat him because I'm a jerk, as I've said already. You know who I'm picking in this race, Jack. I don't care that it's 5.5 furlongs. I seriously don't care. I know that he has very little chance at this distance. But you tell me you're going to think I'm going to pick against Casa Creed? Really? I will never pick against this horse. I have that stupid blind loyalty. But I think maybe last time that turf mile at Keeneland, it really just kind of turned off Bill Mott to running him in the mile. And he just thought he couldn't do it. He got beat by 4 other horses. He only got beat 2 lengths, but he had a pretty good trip, and he just couldn't get there. The 4-star Dave, he won because he's just such a really good horse. And I think that carried him around the 2 turns, and pretty much the way that race shaped up, it turned into a sprint, that last half mile, whatever you want to call it, up at Saratoga. And we know that he's a fantastic turf sprinter. The question is, can Golden Pal be weakened by anybody? And I think there's a chance for that on paper. The question is, will anybody really go after him? Will anybody actually say, hey, my only chance to beat Golden Pal is to be right up there with him? And I don't know if any of the Europeans are going to do it. I don't know if the stablemate is going to do it, Campanelle. I really don't see it happening. And Golden Pal's outside of that horse anyway. You've got Caravel, who's got speed. That horse might put a little pressure on. I just don't see him getting pressured a lot. So I will take Casa Creed from just the angle that I love him and put Golden Pal second because I don't think he could really possibly finish worse than second. And if you want somebody for value underneath, what about the horse who ran so well with Casa Creed, Arrest Me Red, for third at a very generous 15-1? And who is Arrest Me Red trained by? Wesley Ward. And Velasquez knows that Golden Pal is a beast. So Velasquez knows that if he's getting pressured, he can take slightly off. But if he's not, he can be closer right up to him on the inside. I think this is a very fascinating race because the first 16th of a mile, as so often is the case, is going to decide it. And you're going to know who has a chance and who doesn't within 10 seconds after the gates open. So I'll be keying around 8, 11, and 7. Nothing really creative. And the Europeans, I'll let them beat me.
I like that you brought up Golden Pal's stablemate with Campanelle because I feel like now I'll pose this question to you. Do you think that because she's trained by Wesley and Wesley probably wants to get Golden Pal to win, would you be concerned about depending on her to send? Because that's kind of the way that I was looking at this. Is I don't want to have to depend on picking against Golden Pal. Or picking against Golden Pal on her sending. Is that kind of how you look at it, or is it just Golden Pal is probably potentially just faster than her?
I think he's probably just faster, and I don't know. I mean, Frankie Dettori hasn't ridden this horse for a while. I don't know what he's going to do with this horse. What he's going to do with her. And she's drawn well to the inside. Arrest Me Red can be right with Golden Pal because they break right next to each other. The 4 is going to be off. She's got 2 horses in between. Foreigners, I don't know how they run. I don't know their style. One of them is 7-2 on the morning line. The second choice on the morning line, Highfield Princess. Can you give me a little scoop on that horse, Jack? Does that horse usually show speed?
Yeah, so Highfield Princess she's kind of a hip sitter in Europe, and it makes me afraid that she doesn't have the speed to keep up with Golden Pal early. Because if you go back to her run in the Nunthorpe, the filly who's the favorite for the juvenile the juvenile turf sprint, I should say, made the running in that race, and Highfield Princess sat off her. So she's a hip sitter in Europe, to steal a term that Eric used on the podcast yesterday. So in Europe she does that, but it makes me wonder: does she have the speed to keep up with American burners like a Golden Pal?
Yeah, I mean, I think this race really comes down to, what does Wesley do? Does he just want to desperately win the race with Golden Pal? Because Arrest Me Red's no slowpoke. He can be up there if he chooses to, if Velasquez chooses to. And I think kind of Velasquez holds the key to this race if Golden Pal isn't just simply better than everybody else. If he's vulnerable, Velasquez could make him work. And that could possibly work for Arrest Me Red, or it could set it up for somebody coming from behind like a Casa Creed. I don't think Casa Creed will be anywhere near last like he was, let's say, in the Jaipur last year. He's been much more tactical lately, and I expect Saez to know that and be tactical with him here. So I definitely think he has a better chance in that regard with Saez being the rider.
Well, and if we're going to, spend a little bit more time talking about Golden Pal, we go back to the run at Saratoga. If he misses the break, and Johnny decides to run with Arrest Me Red early, then that's trouble for Golden Pal. It's unlikely that he's going to miss the break, but in the event that that happens, and you're backing Golden Pal, and I'm backing Golden Pal too. I'm worried if Golden Pal doesn't break on top like he usually does, and you have a Johnny, you have a Frankie, you potentially have Hart on Highfield Princess try to go with him early, and if Irad has to hustle him up there like he had to do in the Troy, and he could get away with it in the Troy because he wasn't going up against perennial grade and Group 1 level horses, might not be able to get away with that in this race. So I think it's unlikely that he'll miss the break, but if there's always that if he misses the break, that's where the real trouble is. And last year he broke on top and the race was over, but it's not 100% guarantee. Again, I'll stress, it's unlikely that he'll miss the break, but if he misses the break, then I think that that's where you have to put your worry glasses on.
I completely agree with you because I love True Valor and I love Thin White Duke even more, but they are not in the class level of these horses, these top contenders at least that we're talking about. I don't think they'd finish last in this race, those two, but they're just not competing with the top in here. And he just managed to hold to get there actually because he's Golden Pal, and that's it. And hold off Thin White Duke coming at the end. I think that he will break on top. I think that Johnny will apply a little bit of pressure. I just don't know if Arrest Me Red's good enough to keep up with him. That's why I put him mainly third. I know Casa Creed is a freaking beast, so that's why I have no problem taking him on top, in addition to the fandom I have for him. But, yeah, as I started this race analysis with, if you get 2-1 on Golden Pal, that is just an absolute gift, and I doubt you get it.
And we spent enough time talking about the Turf Sprint. We'll move on now to everybody's favorite race, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. I know that you feel very strongly about one horse in this race, and the race choice selection for him. So I'll let you get into that with this horse.
Cody's Wish beat Jackie's Warrior, and they're running him in here. That's all it needs to be said. I don't get it. I think it's stupid. I think it made the sprint such a worse race than it could have been. I've said it before, and other people brought it up well before I caught on to it, but the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile dilutes both the Classic and it dilutes the Sprint. This year, it didn't really dilute the Classic because, to me, you have 8 really good horses in there and one horse that's probably just going to win. But it did dilute the Sprint because Cody's Wish should be in there. I really didn't make a pick for this race because I kind of almost don't care about this race a little bit. And I'm also surprised a little bit that Gunite is in here. I feel like Gunite could have been in the sprint for sure as well. I want him at 2 turns. The horse hasn't run 2 turns, and no, he's never run 2 turns. That the 1 mile race was at Belmont, so that wasn't 2 turns. Then you have Cody's Wish, who has run 2 turns and has succeeded, but geez, I really think he could have given Jack Christopher a run for his money. I think one horse you really have to think about, and normally I'm on the older horses over 3-year-olds, unless they show real signs of stepping up, but Cyberknife's tough. And I really never gave him the credit that he deserves, but all he keeps doing is running good races. I mean, throw the Derby out, whatever. He was close early. Don't worry about it. I'll always have no problem throwing the Derby out if you run poorly. He held off Zandon, who loves to finish second in the Travers. And then he ran a good third behind Zandon and Taiba, who's in the Classic. I think this is a very chalky race. I think this race comes down to the 5, the 6, the 7, and the 9. One of those 4. I love Chad. I just really don't have a good feeling about Pipeline. I just don't think he's good enough. And Pipeline is in here. And let me just check here. Yeah, highly motivated is not. Do you know where highly motivated is?
I do not. I want that. I didn't even think about that, but that's a great question. Where highly motivated is right now.
Yeah, I was at that race on Haskell Day, and I thought that Pipeline was a better bet proposition because of the price. But geez, I just don't love him here even as much as I love Chad. If he wins this race, I'll feel a lot worse. But I think this is kind of a chalky fest. I mean, you can get a price if you get a Laurel River. If they ignore that horse, I mean, they usually don't ignore Baffert. I almost feel like Cyberknife will get bet down from that 9-2 because everybody knows him from the Triple Crown Trail and the 3-year-old trail. I just don't love this race from a betting perspective. And if it gun to my head, I'd probably pick Cody's Wish over Cyberknife, but I don't really have to, so I don't think I will.
Now we'll move on to the Filly and Mare Turf. This is, aside from the turf, I mean, I love the two turf races on this card. This race came up very well. It's a true international flavor for the Breeders' Cup. I am interested to see if you're going to get into the angle with Chad. There's 3 Chad Brown horses in here, and 2 of them are pretty solid prices on the morning line. And then there's some good quality Europeans in here among. Overall, it was a race that came up very well. You see a good amount of just this race offers everything that I think a Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf should offer. And I personally, this race, this was the best field that I thought in terms of quality of horses and amount of horses that have a chance to win the race. I thought that this was the best race on Saturday.
I don't think it's the most exciting race on Saturday. I think the regular turf is, but I think it could be the most wide open race, despite the 2 Europeans that are going to take money. And I love Chad, but I think one of the big angles for me in this race is to mainly play against an Italian, because an Italian has tripped out the last 2 times, and I think by design from Chad to just send this horse in races where he had other horses that are really good. And yes, she was not the favorite both times. And yes, I think he does do that on purpose. I've cited examples on my own YouTube channel. I've cited examples on Twitter. I think it's what him, Peter Brandt, and Klarovich do when they work together. So I don't think she's going to get away with it this time. There's other speed in here. Of course, the California horse is one of them from the inside. We'll have to see what happens early on in this race. It's going to have a lot to do if she can hang around. I don't think she will hang around. I think the strategy I would use in here is to play the 2 European favorites who are very highly regarded, Nashua and Above the Curve, with the other 2 Peter Brandt horses, Rougier, who finally got back on track last time up at Woodbine, and with Virginia Joy. Now, Virginia Joy can be a little bit more tactical, in my opinion. And the horse will have a long time to get over. And you know that IRAD is going to try to save ground, at least as long as he can, before he spins out to the 10 path coming for home. This is not a race that Virginia Joy is going to be right up on the pace like she has been on a couple of occasions, including when she absolutely walked the dog and Joel Rosario cost more like Goddess the Flower Bowl. But she can be closer as compared to Rougier, in my opinion, and that's what elevates Virginia Joy to being my top choice in this race, along with the 2 Europeans underneath her as far as picking order, and then I'd throw Rougier in for 4th. One horse I really don't like is Tuesday. I just never got turned on to Tuesday. Watching her races, there's other Europeans in here that are long prices. If you can figure them out, go ahead. You can maybe make some money if they run a big one. But I will stick to the 3 and the 4 and the 2 longer priced Peter Brandt horses. I think this is the chance to beat Chad at a short price once again and get the longer prices involved, even if they can't beat the 2 Europeans, to have them in the exacta, the triple, or the super. That's how I think you can make your money in here. I could use an Italian defensively if she just hangs around, because she does hang around. I thought that just the game when she went out there was her best race of the year, as much as she finished third. That was the race where she went insanely fast and just got ran down by Regal Glory and Wakanaka. The last 2 races, Diana, she went kind of fast, but nobody else really went with her, just opened up. Just the game, she actually got pressured for a little bit. And then in the First Lady, it was just kind of 47, 110, whatever, just kind of strolling around there. So Rosario will try to do it again, sending speed horses to the lead, which he either does that or comes from dead last. So I don't think she'll be able to wire the field, and that's why I have the opinions that I do. I think she gets reeled in.
And we'll move on now to the sprint, a race that got diluted by several circumstances, and now it turns into you have morning line 4 to 5 favorite Jackie's Warrior against a bunch of horses that on paper he should beat, but Jackie's Warrior is also a very weird horse and has lost races before that were very winnable on paper, and he really should have won, including last time. Even though Cody's Wish ran a really strong race there, I still maintain that he should have won that race last time. Thank you, Joel Rosario, for that, but that's beside the point. How'd you view this race?
My opinion in this race was pretty simple. Jackie's Warrior should win. Am I going to pick him? No, because I don't need a horse that pays $380 on my pick sheet to come in. I just, who cares? It doesn't matter. So I will pick against him. I don't think there's a good chance he'll lose, but I'm going to take a shot. Kamari, down toward the inside, she's going to take attention. I don't like that she draws inside of Jackie's Warrior. I think the only horse who can really beat Jackie's Warrior is Elite Power. And I said after they finished the Vosburg, I was there, I said that was maybe the worst Vosburg ever run in history. But then you look at the other races that day, and you notice how slow the track really was. And I get the horses behind him are not that good. But he won pretty easily and kind of just took off. I think he's got a chance if Jackie's Warrior just doesn't hold on, or if Rosario goes too slow and lets the other horses into the race, which hopefully he learns his lesson for his sake and doesn't do that again and just lets him run like he should just let more like Goddess run however she wants to. I don't like Aloha West. Don't pretty much like anybody else. I think this race goes through the 9 and possibly the 6. And it's nothing better.
I should mention one thing about Aloha West, and I forgot to mention this on the podcast this week, is over the weekend I had a dream that Aloha West won the sprint again. So do with that information what you will. I don't predict, races that I dream about, the results that happen in my subconscious don't happen, but, maybe this will be the one time that it could potentially happen. So do with that information what you will. We'll move on.
Let me throw one more thing in, Jack. There's other horses that have a little bit of speed in here. I just don't think they're going to show it. I think they're scared of Jackie's Warrior, and all it takes is them to be scared of Jackie's Warrior and for Rosario to learn his lesson, and this race is over.
Exactly. That's why I didn't pick against Jackie's Warrior, and that's why Jackie's Warrior is going to be very short on the board. And we'll get to the race that's going to bring me the most happiness on Saturday. That's going to be the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Everybody knows where I'm going in this race, so we'll just get your thoughts on the best filly in the country. She said, ha, 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 I'm back the last 2 times, and she's going to say it again, and she's going to win herself another Eclipse Award, even though we don't talk about those awards on this YouTube channel.
I think that she will be laughing once again, and I'm picking Malathaat to win the Distaff. I get it. Nest is a freak. I love Nest. I think she's awesome. But Malathot is the older horse, and her last two races have been absolutely fantastic. Here's the thing with search results, who I also like. Search results ran the best race in the FIPS and got run down by Clarion and Malathot. Then she goes and wins the pitcher, and then she gets beat by Malathot by a half length. As far as I know, search results has never finished in front of Malathot, even though she once, on one occasion, she did run the better race compared to her. It's just not enough for me. I think Malathot wins this race, and I think you might get a little bit of a show for a while. Search results might make the lead at some point before Nest comes and swoops her in, and I think Malathot comes and grinds down Nest. That's my prediction of how this turns out. I think the triple will be the three favorites, excluding Clarier. So 167 box, nothing that's going to make you any money. I don't like Clarier in here. I just thought her last race was so bad that I just don't want any part of her. And 4-1 is just not good enough for off that kind of a race. So I will box the 1, 6, and 7 for the picks in here. Even if I was betting, I wouldn't play the race. I'd sit back and enjoy, because I think this is going to be a good one.
And we'll move on to another race that I assume you're going to say you'll be sitting back and enjoying, the Breeders' Cup Classic. I'm going to sit back and enjoy this one. I think the whole racing world is going to sit back and watch this one. Do you have anything else in the Classic besides Flightline?
Yeah, so Naira Bets is running a promotion. I believe it's you bet either $10 or $20 to win on Flightline, and you'll get double your money if he wins. I suggest that everybody opt into that promotion and use it. And I think the same thing is for Cave Rock the day before. Well, I'm not going to really talk about the white-haired guy on here. So do with that information what you will. But, yeah, you might want to do that promotion on Naira Bets on Saturday. This horse is really good. He ran one of the best race, probably the best dirt race I've seen since Arrogate's Dubai World Cup. Actually, I don't think anything comes close. It was the best dirt race since Arrogate's Dubai World Cup. Other horses I'd use in here. If I was picking this race in the racing form, I would absolutely try to be a jerk and pick against Flightline. But I don't have to, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to mention the other horses that I would use. Of the 3-year-olds, I prefer Epicenter. He's the consistent one. I get that Tybe is getting better. Something about him, though, I just don't trust. And you got Smith, you got Baffert, but you also get the one hole. And everybody was thinking about Tiz the Law 2 years ago. He had the 2 posts, and he didn't have a good trip in this race because Manny Franco pulled him back. And he's definitely not going to make the lead in here. He's going to have to rate. So I don't like Tyba. I prefer Epicenter over him. Another horse that I'm going to use in the picks is Olympiad, because I think he is the absolute second best 1.25 mile horse in this country. I think that the race that I would like to call the Woodward, I don't like to call it the name it is now, because that race should be at Belmont, but the race he ran last time was very good. And then another horse I like at a big price is Happy Saver, because of Pletcher, this is his thing, and Happy Saver just shows up time and time again. He got cut off last time and has stretched a little bit. I think he'll run better this time. You notice a big name that I didn't mention at all. Pletcher's other horse, Pletcher's shorter price. The horse who won the Woodward last time at Aqueduct. Life is good. Life is good at 1 1/8 miles. Life is not good at 1 1/4 miles. Sorry. So I will stick to Flightline and then the 3, 6, and 7 in some way. If I was picking the racing form, I'd be a dick and pick Olympiad on top. But I don't have to do that. So I think I'm just going to sit back and enjoy myself, as most other people will be doing the same.
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned Happy Saver because I threw him out as one to consider. And if I'm getting anywhere close to that 30-1, I'm throwing place on him because, I mean, the place pool is going to be all screwed up because of the presence of Flightline. But I still think if you get, and he'll probably be greater than 30-1. So if you get around 30, 35, 40, and he runs second, dollar place, $2 place, that's not going to pay terrible. So I think it's well worth the investment with Happy Saber there. Definitely, the classic. You can't bet if you're going to bet the classic. You can't bet it without including Happy Saver in something. But this is probably best just used as a watching race. But if you are going to bet something, again, like I said in the preview and like I'm putting out here, I think Happy Saver is probably your best option to go to in that race. Any further thoughts on any other races that we've touched on, or anything that we haven't touched on, things on Friday that you saw, or anything to end off with before we head on out of here?
Yeah, I prioritized Saturday when I was going through the races, and Friday I looked at a couple and I kind of struggled to get through them. So I don't want to reiterate those points now. If I have any ideas, I'll put them up on Twitter. And you may notice that during this video, I was unsure of a lot of things. You know, I don't cover the Breeders' Cup on my YouTube channel. I do put out tweets about the races, and I will make more concrete ideas for these races and put them out before they're run because, honestly, I don't have anything else to do Friday or Saturday. So I will be watching the races. Much as I'm not in love with the Breeders' Cup, I will definitely be hoping that you have a great time down there, Jack. I think you're going to have a hell of a time because from what I've heard, Lexington is a great town and it just breathes horse racing. So it's definitely not the worst place to have the Breeders' Cup, although we do want it to come back home someday. But I think the atmosphere will be fantastic for you. And I hope you have a really, really good time. And I want to thank you for having me on here to express my very unsure opinions for most of these races.
I will echo your point. It's been a long 17 years, and it looks like it's going to be longer than 17 years before we can get it back into our neck of the woods. But it is going to be a good time, and we appreciate everyone that has been involved with Racing Rundown this week, with getting all this Breeders' Cup content out. As I said, this is probably the last thing that we're going to have this week. So if you haven't checked things out, the playlist is going to be below in the description, so you can go look at the team's full thoughts on these Breeders' Cup races, and we will see you for our Breeders' Cup recap come episode 184 next Monday. Have a good one.